So, I'm at Queen's University Belfast showing people The Nightmare Before Christmas, a recent exposé of turkey farming in the UK, and stay tuned and we'll see what goes down. Merry Christmas, you beautiful animals.
Cool, good job.
Thank you so much, man, for watching.
Yes, no worries at all.
So I guess the first question is, have you ever seen anything like that before? So just wondering, like, if you ever seen anything like that before, or like what your thoughts are. I just want to honestly say thanks for not looking away, because I know it's not easy and it's quite graphic.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's close to Christmas and turkey is traditionally what people eat. Christmas is like seen as a time of goodwill and peace on earth and all that, and we're just sort of making the point that this is something that we're all, like, most of society is participating in. And I would, from my point of view, like, we do activism quite regularly, like in experience of chatting with people. Like most people, it's generally not on their mind. They've not really maybe seen something once or twice, but it doesn't go much deeper than that. And and that was me too. Like I used to eat animal products every day, and then I seen stuff like that. I heard a lecture about the ethics of consuming animals, from the animals' point of view, what they go through and everything. And I'm like nearly 4 years vegan now. So I guess the opening question is, like, have you ever seen anything like that before? Or?
I've seen a few things, like a few documentaries and things like that, but I mean, how engaged I am, probably not very.
So I've seen something similar to that before, but not around turkeys, or maybe even stuff in the UK is not as exposed.
Were you aware that, like, there was factory farms in the UK, like American style, intensive farming, artificial breeding? And
I wasn't aware, but I was highly suspicious. You know, so I couldn't give you
with all the huge supermarkets and stuff.
I mean, it makes sense that these aren't coming from local organic farms. The amount of meat that you can find in the supermarket means so no smoke without fire. So I was pretty certain that was the case.
I guess sort of the question, the thing that's on my mind is, like, Christmas. It's such a sweet time of year. It's close to New Year, where we think about the future and peace on earth and everything like that. There's a great book called The World Peace Diet, and it's the theme is sort of like peace starts in your plate. And it's kind of like, have you ever thought about how, you know, sitting down and having, say, a meal with animal products have you ever thought about it in terms of, like, that's actually a plate of violence? It's a plate where an innocent individual suffered. Because I know that I grew up, and before I ever came across, like, veganism and that philosophy and way of life, I never thought about it that way. Always grew up having pets, loved animals, and just never thought. I just looked at meat as food, as a food source, and I never looked at it as, like, a cut up part of someone's corpse that it's just culturally accepted to consume, you know. So for me, it's fundamentally about changing a person's way of seeing, from something that is perceived typically as food to this is actually there's a moral element here. There's an animal who has a preference to live, and we're paying for their slaughter. So I mean, what do you think about all that?
Well, I'll comment on you said it was that, you know, peace on earth is kind of, there's another part to that is goodwill to all men, and I think that's the problem with the narrative today. Is it's goodwill to all, it's mankind. That's what's important, and people sort of wrongly say, well, here's us, the humans. You know, we, like, you know, this planet's for us. Everyone else can, and, you know, so then I suppose you could rephrase that to, you know, peace and goodwill to all beings, which kind of isn't the narrative, which is quite unfortunate. So I have, it's funny. I just came from the falafel restaurant, actually, so I'm...
Umi?
I just came from Umi, actually, so I am... I do actually think about that quite a lot.
I worked in a butcher's for a bit, but...
Wow.
If they're free range, sure.
Yeah.
They're looked after a bit better. It's really better off they're being killed than if they're in such bad conditions. You know what I mean?
Aye, because their whole life's been horrible,
better off dead, maybe. I don't know.
I suppose... It's interesting you've worked in the butchers and stuff. Have you ever seen, like, the slaughterhouse aspect of it, or?
Nah, well, I grew up fishing and all that, so I know, like, you know, as long as you're going to use the animal and it's alright, maybe if they're, that's obviously looking at the worst types of these factories, not all.
So it's basically like they're hidden cameras, so it's like showing what people do to animals when they don't think they're being watched. and there was an article published in the Telegraph. It was actually 2 years old. I didn't see it till recently, but it was like, are you aware there's over 245 factory farms in Northern Ireland?
There's one big one in Korea, isn't it? WD meats, isn't it?
Yeah. So cases like that where there's like thousands and thousands of birds in like one shed, like, you know, there's no way you can look after the welfare of every single bird in there. There's just too many for like one farmer or whatever. Sort of where I'm coming from is it's not the, I know what we showed was like undercover factory farms, but even say on like a high welfare farm, free range, really good quality of life. If we think about it, because when we're talking like that, we're thinking how we humans have that animal's best interest, because we're letting them be free. But if we switch our perspective to the animal and think about like, okay, they've had a good life, the minority of them, because most animals are factory farmed, you know, the few that have had a good life, like, we're still sending them to probably the same slaughterhouse that all the factory farmed animals are going to, and even if it's a different slaughterhouse, like, they still get hung upside down and someone pulls a knife across their throat. So what I mean is, like, do you think that can be like in today's society when we have other options? Do you think we can justify doing that to animals if, like, we don't have to anymore now that we have, you know, alternatives and the information that we have? Basically, I'm like,
you can look at it from that point of view, but then you have to look at it the industry side of it, jobs also. What do you do with the thousands of people, and then really who's going to be looking after turkeys? They're not going to be any life really for them, because no one's going to look after something for free. So it gives something like even the loads of ones get treated bad, but the good ones have a decent quality of life until they die.
I've been going through the process of going vegan, but it's a very, very slow progress. Like, I've not eaten red meat or pork products for about a year and a half now. And in the new year I'm going to stop eating chicken products, but you know, like, and that's just the thing though, is like having that sort of the tiering, especially, like, you know, because the reason I started this process was watching slaughterhouse footage of pigs and cows, and it really broke my heart. So then seeing that with chickens as well, you're like, there's no, you shouldn't. Turkeys, sorry. You know, but you shouldn't try and have a hierarchy of which ones matter more, I guess. So
exactly.
So I'm feeling quite bad now.
What I love about the whole veganism thing is, and you're saying you looked into like the health of the plant-based eating, like, you know, it's proven that like all the nutrients, vitamins, minerals, like, they all come from plants in the first place. We can get them from plants, like you say, the B12, like that's all sources of B12 are now synthetic, so it's injected into farm animals. That's how we get it in animal products. And like me as a vegan, like, some foods are fortified with B12. You can get like flakes to sprinkle on your food, or you can just take a supplement. No one has to get stabbed in the throat. You know what I mean? And then there's the environmental. It's also better for the environment, basically. There's a good piece of research by Oxford University. Dr. Joseph Poor basically found that the best thing we can do for the environment is to eat a whole foods plant-based vegan diet. It's better than reducing your flights and like transport and everything. So it has so much leverage in terms of, like, it's better for the planet, it's better for our health. It's a diet of completely free from cholesterol, quite low in saturated fat as well. And then ultimately, it's an ethical issue. It's like, you know, you see these programs on TV about food, but they never visit the slaughterhouse. They always skip that part.
Don't know why the sausage is made, I guess.
And it's like, we're being deceived there. But when you're ignorant to something that you're ignorant of, you can't know. So you can't be held like accountable to what you don't know. So this is why we want to show people, let them know, and just basically see where they're at with that, what they think. Two things, good points. Two things what you said there. Just want to make sure I don't skip them. We'll do the jobs one first. Think about it like this. Say the tobacco industry, all right? No, do you think much people, like, everyone knows now that tobacco causes cancer? And that not many people smoke because of that information. Do you think, like, much people cared about the people who had jobs in the tobacco industry when it started to dwindle? Do you think much people cared about, like, you know, what about those people who are going to lose their jobs? Or do you think people cared more about the suffering of, like, families being heartbroken and people dying of cancer? And the point I'm trying to make is, so animal agriculture, okay, say if we stop eating animal products, what about all the farmers' jobs and the people that work in slaughterhouses? What about all their jobs? the thing is, we have to have perspective in terms of who's more a victim. Is it the human who has options, who can diversify? Like, we're incredibly adaptable. It's how we survived all this time. We can adapt. We can like move into some other form of agriculture. Is the human the victim, or is the animal who's been stabbed in the throat the victim? You know, that's a point. And another point is, as we can transition more and more to a plant-based system, farmers and stuff, like, obviously they're going to go where the money is, so they can start moving into plant-based agriculture. And as a person who, like, I used to eat animal products, but I don't support it anymore. Like, I don't want farmers going out of a job. You know, we need farmers. Like, you know, we need farmers to sort of transition into the plant-based agricultural system. So with that, it's like, it's not necessarily a dead end. There might be difficulty, but they will live to see another day, and they can adapt, whereas the animals are just killed. And the important thing is, like, I think would you agree that they're more a victim in that scenario?
What do you do with them?
Yeah, well, so
what do you do with the, say, right, stop tomorrow, what is it, there's millions, say, billions turkeys. Yeah. Are you going to look after them?
Great question. It's a common thing that people think of, like so basically, in reality, let's be honest, like, it's never ever going to happen overnight where the world's just going to stop.
Transition period.
So it'll be a gradual thing, and as more and more people transition, they'll breed less and less animals into existence, because the reason there's so many factory farms is because they're artificially doing it to keep up with an accelerating rate. Like, I learned that, like, factory farm turkeys now, they can't actually mate naturally. They're so selectively bred to be heavier than they naturally are, that they can't, the reproductive organ, they can't mate, so they have to artificially inseminate them. So we'll never be in this scenario where we have billions of birds, and what do we do? It'll gradually phase out. There'll be less and less, and the little ones that we have, because we bred them into existence, we have an obligation there. What does that say about us as a human species? Well, if we brought them here, I think the answer to that would be like a sanctuary. Let them live the rest of their lives in a sanctuary and die a natural death like us. Because people sometimes say they're going to die anyway, and I think there's a huge difference between naturally letting someone live out their life and sticking a knife in their throat years ahead of their time, because all the animals are slaughtered like way before, you know, they grow old and that sort of thing. So
kind of in a rush here, but
for us, it's like fundamentally trying to change people's mindset in terms of not looking at the flesh of a dead animal as a food source, and looking at it as like that's an act of injustice. Mm-hmm. Like, they were innocent, they did nothing wrong to deserve such treatment, and by the scientific evidence or whatever, like, we do not need to consume animal products to have optimum health. It's incredibly bad for the environment. So there's the environmental and there's the health as well. It's sort of like we're filtering our nutrition through animals when we can go straight to the plant-based source, which, like, most of the animals that we eat are herbivores, so we just go straight to them.
Go straight to the source.
Don't kill animals. It's better. It's a win-win-win thing. So
I would be in favour of that.
Yeah, like, have you ever heard of veganuary?
I have heard that.
It's like taking a pledge to try veganism for like the month of January, New Year, new resolution, and everything. They basically have recipes, a mentor, tips, like nutritionists, dietitians, to make sure like everything you're taken care of in terms of health, and there's a variety of things for you to eat and everything. So veganuary is a great asset. Like, you just veganuary online and you can find that. But I mean, you seem like quite an open-minded person. Like, you've looked into this yourself.
Try to be.
Yeah, it's always good, isn't it? It's always good. The way I see it is, like, there's two choices. The first choice is to basically, if we could live in a world without harming others, without harming humans, that's the first one. Or the second one is without harming humans or animals, simply by like what we put on our plate. Like, which one would you say you would identify with as like in line with your values? Which one would you think it would be?
Like, hypocritically,
I know that's quite a simplistic version.
No, of course. I think hypocritically I would say humans and animals, but I still I guess I'm trying to deprogram myself from like 28 years of eating meat, but I'm definitely, I've made big strides this year, and I've noticed certain health benefits and all, but I still allow myself, like a portion of meat a week.
Yeah.
I think ultimately my goal is to kind of get down to doing.
So you think, like, fundamentally, if they have a good quality of life, it justifies taking their life? even when we don't need to do it. Because my whole thing is like, if we don't need to, if we don't need to, we have to have a pretty good justification for killing them if we don't actually have to.
But then like, it's I know what you mean, like, but then like everything, it's like,
and I
when you're killing ecosystems, killing like, I know like vegetables and all, like everything like is
I mean,
if you look at it from
we know like from a biological and a anatomical point of view, like vegetables aren't the same as animals. Like they're alive, but they don't have a brain or a nervous system. And like animals, we know, have brains, nervous systems, pain receptors. They have families. You know, they bleed the same blood as us. If you really care about plants, think about all the plants that we have to feed animals just to eat the animals. Whereas if we eat a plant-based diet, we consume far less plants, you know, because like we only have to eat a small amount of plants, whereas cows, all those animals, they have to eat a whole. So if we really, basically, like if we really care about plants, which I'm not really convinced that you're like a plants,
really,
you know, I mean, like say take like a house fire.
It's like a Buddhist point of view, like that.
I'm familiar with that. Like all life, all
the same, but then
it's like we have to eat something. So if we really care, like plants are the most primitive life forms, you know, they don't have brains, nervous systems, so we should go where we know we can pretty conclusively say, well, they suffer the least. I think it's about like, because I'm not trying to advocate that, but like just by our very existence we cause harm, but we should try to reduce as much as practicably possible. And basically, like I know, like I
don't agree with stopping it completely, but I agree with maybe putting laws on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So increase the quality of life, but still kill them.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like at the end of the day, like I'm gonna walk away from here and still eat a turkey dinner.
Yeah.
It's not gonna change my point of view, but if you know, you don't have to look where it's coming from that way.
See, yeah, I mean, you don't, but I feel like when we buy these animal products, we're forcing animals. Like they don't have a say, but like, and we can look away, but that's kind of like, let's wear a blindfold and pretend it's not happening and like be blissfully ignorant. It makes us feel better, it makes us not feel bad that we're like, would you ever put a dog in a slaughterhouse and eat a dog? They're animals.
Probably.
You would?
I wouldn't really bother me, like,
no?
That's what it is, like.
Yeah.
Like if I needed to eat it, like.
But the thing is, like, we don't.
Nah, well, like at the end of the day, like an animal's an animal, like.
Do you like, we're animals? We're just like more evolved, apparently.
Well, we're the alpha predator, or whatever you want.
So you think against the lion you would win?
If I had a gun,
The likes of, you know, factory farming, it will have to be some sort of taxation that kind of clamps down and slows that process, and more people are becoming vegan. And
the issue I find as well is that it's sort of a cultural war thing as well now. Like it's not just a sense of like what's practical or economically viable. It is also that like there's a great big massive parts of the population who just like refuse to entertain the idea of like moving away from meat. And for me it's just like diabolical, because you're tying your identity towards like getting a real
suffering
beef burger and stuff. Like
it's
like the people that are like, oh, they're making these the alternative meats in laboratories now, I'll never eat that, just give me a real beef burger. It's like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, they completely miss the point, don't they?
Why does something have to suffer for you to enjoy something that tastes the same? Yeah,
that's it.
But that's the issue of it. It's a culture war as much as like an actual you know, an economic battle against like lobbying firms, like the big like the agricultural industry, which is like never, you know, is going to do it, like fight tooth and nail to make sure we never like actually want to change things, let alone like let them change.
I think I'm probably a realistic example of like the general population of like, I see that, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of sad, but it's not going to stop me from eating chicken.
Do you mind if I probe a little bit more? You just made an interesting comment. You like see the suffering, but you don't think it holds enough like veracity in terms of like it's not going to stop you. And the reason that I ask is because it's like so you're aware then yourself that like it's not a need, it's a want, and if we don't need it, and if it comes at the expense of killing a creature unnecessarily, like what, I'm just sort of curious to understand the psychology of like what makes you still put, like, say it's your convenience or in front of the life of an animal.
Well, I would say I wholeheartedly accept, you know, and I think some people would be too squeamish to look at that and then still go, oh look, a chicken fillet, where did this come from? And I think either you accept that that's how this animal got into this plastic packaging or else you're living like fantasy. And for me, I think like, I mean, it's I did have a point there.
This has been a great chat. What I do is basically give people an information card. Basically, there is nothing. See, once I got it on an ethical level. See, once I seen like slaughterhouse footage and learned about the process from artificial insemination to your fridge. It was such a focal point that I just made the leap. Like there was the temptation disappeared. I just held myself more accountable because it's not even about like, say you pick up a product and it has like 2% milk. It's not about like the fact that it's just a little bit. It's about the fact that in principle an animal was exploited and ultimately slaughtered, and it was unnecessary because like there's plant-based products, you know, and all the rest of it. And I think, like you say, we have there's this hypocrisy in society where we care about some animals, like don't kill the whales, don't shoot the lion, don't kill the dog, but like we'll eat chicken and pig. And so it was just like, wow, I started to look at all animals as the same in terms of like they're different to us in all the ways that don't really matter, but in the ways that matter, they have families, they can suffer, feel pain, they want to be free from exploitation. So once I really understood that, the dots were connected, I was like, this makes sense. I have no real argument to continue. And basically it's like we all say, live and let live. I just extend that to non-human animals. So if I give you this little card, it's just some resources.
Yes, no problem.
The first one, I think it's the best. It was the speech that made me go vegan. It's called The Best Speech You'll Ever Hear. And then the rest of it, Dominion, is like slaughterhouse footage. I know that's like a heavy thing to take on, but honestly, man, I feel like if we're paying for it, the animals are forced to go through it. The very least we could do is bear witness to what we're putting them through.
I agree to it.
And it's that little bit of temporary discomfort that we feel for watching it. That really makes you solidified in like, I'm just not doing this ever again. It's worse than my worst nightmare and all the rest of it. So I'll leave you with that. New Year's coming up, man. I would just encourage you to think about it. You seem like a good guy in terms of like that is in alignment with what you think about.
I think you're probably maybe the easiest person you might chat to today, because certainly there'll be a few people that you might get more resistance from. But it's definitely a train of thought that I'm aligning with, and haven't got my diet perfect yet, but I think I will eventually. So.
Awesome, man. What's your name?
Mark.
Thomas.
Nice
Thank
to
you so much for the interview,
no
man.
worries,
Cheers.
Thank you.
What if you didn't have a gun? You were just your natural evolved human.
That's me evolved. I've evolved to build a gun. So, you've evolved to do these things.
So just because you can, that makes it okay? Like, we have evolved to clench fists. Does that mean we can go around punching people because we can?
No, well, it's a sport. You can. You can do
but
boxing.
the difference in boxing is both participants are willing. They're willingly participating. The animals aren't willing participants. They're forced. They don't get a say.
I don't know, because I like eating meat. Like
Man, I get that. I used to eat meat. Like, I'm 27 now. I've been vegan nearly 4 years, and I didn't stop because I just decided I didn't like the taste of meat. I agree, it tastes good. It tastes good, but like, what becomes?
Standpoint.
Yeah, it's like, what is taste pleasure more important than someone's life?
I don't know. Like, you know what?
It's a sensory pleasure.
It just is what it is. Like 6 to 1, half dozen an hour.
Do you think that like every time you wanted to eat an animal, you would be comfortable sticking a knife in their throat? You'd be willing to do that, like to eat their body?
It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
It just.
Do you grow up in? I get the vibe like you grew up in that sort of background, or
There's no. It's just.
You got any thoughts, or like? No. I imagine you might slightly differ in opinion. Like, it's, by the way, it's cool if like you completely disagree with me. It's completely cool.
No, I get what you're saying, but it is what it is. Like, if it's needless slaughtering, not good, but like it is.
And how do you define needless?
If you need it.
Yeah, and do we?
Aye.
Why do we need to?
I'm very piggy, like I'm not eating vegetables.
I was never big, like people have this idea that like vegans just eat like plates of vegetables and it's horrible and it's bland and it's not tasty or enjoyable. Man, you can get plant-based chicken, you can get plant-based bacon, you can get all that stuff. It's just made, like we have the technology, it's nearly 2020, like we're evolving, like the vegan products are getting better, so it's like, say you came across like a vegan option that looked like dead animal flesh, that cooked like dead animal flesh, tasted like dead animal flesh.
Like, if it tastes good, like I'm all for it.
Yeah. So taste is the number one factor. Yeah.
Well,
Is taste more important than life?
I wouldn't say that now, but
Thanks, man. Well. No, here, I really appreciate the interview. Merry Christmas and thanks very much.
Like, it's not like I go and sit down at the table and I look at this chicken fillet and I think about a factory farm.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, you know, make that decision from the top, like from government level. Yeah. You know, people aren't going to change like on their own accord.
That's a good point. It's like a common thing I've heard is that like it's kind of sort of shifting the responsibility from the individual to the government, which, to be frank, like we feel like that kind of gives you the feeling that alleviates me. So I'm not the problem, it's the government. But what I've seen happening within the vegan movement, I think you're right. There's correctness in both areas there. But from like being vegan nearly 4 years and seeing the plant-based market shift and everything, that's not because of government, that's because of the individual consumers choosing. So it's like it's like if we wait until someone else sorts it out, we'd be waiting forever.
In like the last 5 years alone, you can see a cultural shift.
Big time.
And you know, like I'll go to a restaurant and I will take a vegetarian option or I will take a vegan option, but you know, it doesn't. I still will eat meat at this time anyway.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't rule. It's not that I wouldn't rule it out in the future, but I think.
So do you still fundamentally? You made a good point as well earlier. You were saying like when you sit down to have chicken, you don't think about the factory farm.
Yeah.
Do you think if you like did, you know, every time you had animal flesh, you thought about the fact that you're contributing to inflicting suffering on an animal, that would make you think differently? Because I think it's the fact that like we're banning animal products, we're paying to put an animal through something that they don't have any say in, but we're sitting comfortably at the table and we have a choice not to think about it, and it's just like a blissful ignorance that allows us to perpetuate this system of suffering that I think like when we do face it, like no one actually thinks it's okay. So do you think it's that like willful ignorance that, I mean, do you think there's like a humane way to kill an animal who inherently has a preference to not be killed?
No, I don't think there's a humane way to kill an animal. And that's
there's
not like, you know, killing is killing, and that's
by definition it's not humane.
Yeah.
What I love about the vegan thing is like so most of the suffering in the world we can do absolutely nothing about, but the vegan thing is like breakfast, lunch and dinner 3 times a day. We can choose, like I there's like a mantra like peace begins on your plate. It's like we can choose to make a kind choice or a choice that harms an innocent creature who did nothing wrong, and for me like that's completely in alignment with, and I feel like take your average mentally healthy person in society, that is in alignment with who they are, and it's like we're all, you know, our parents raise us to respect others and share with others and these things, and it's like I know animals are typically perceived as less than, and the way I see it, like they're different in ways that don't really matter, but in the ways that do matter, like capacity to suffer, like, you know, we're very similar.
I think to go back to the idea, the mantra you mentioned of like peace begins on the plate, I think that touches back on something else we were talking about sort of the distinctions there between like individual choice and say like top down, like with the government and stuff.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, for me, like when you discuss climate change and people say like, well, you know, you can make all the individual choices you want, but like there's like there's like 100 companies which are doing like 6%.
Yeah.
And I used to subscribe to that. I used to think, we've got to make it structural. But I was thinking afterwards, well, sure, it is structural, but like those 100 companies, most of that is like for consumer goods, like that stuff that we are like that they're not
it's
just
like trickle down thing.
They're not just like, they've not just got like a hole they're filling with like coal and oil and just like burning it. They are actively doing something that we're benefiting from, so it's got to be a personal choice of like how we engage with products as much as making them through like through democratic processes.
That's such a great point. It's like we vote with our money to tell these big corporations what to do with it.
Well, I mean, you know, in like the neoliberal world, like we've got we have like democratic processes to do things, but also the market, like the market demands and does what it wants, like but like only as long as it's profitable. So it's on us to vote with like both our ballot and our money,
political power and our money.
Yes,
it's like
exactly.
Society is like a reflection of the social consciousness of individuals. So it's great point, man. I guess I mean, these are two like open-minded people. You've already thought about this. All I can do.
That video's accelerated me.
Yeah. All I can do. I can't change the whole world, but I can have conversations with the people in front of me. That's all I can do, and we just give people a little card with some information, and might not make you go vegan, but at least you'll have a lot more information to consider, which is like, I would say, a whole other side of the coin I wasn't even aware of existed for like 20 odd years of my life. I was completely oblivious to. What did it for me was this one here. It's called The Best Speech You Will Ever Hear. It's
my friend Chris that we both worked with, he watched that and he went
I went vegan overnight.
Really?
Yeah, because I learned about vegetarianism. Like, the dairy cows still go to the slaughterhouse, the chickens that lay eggs still go to the slaughterhouse, so it's like, dairy is just liquid flesh. Eggs, we're still, none of those animals get to live. They all end up slaughtered. So I think it's like, if we're on board for vegetarianism, really, like, veganism is like, you may as well embody it fully, instead of like, because say if it was any other form of injustice, we would never advocate like people reduce the racism. We would just say, just stop racism altogether. So just some resources for you. What was your names?
I'm Gavin.
Nice to meet you. And Joel.
I'm Thomas. Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And thanks, lads. Really appreciate it.